My name is Kevin Kane. For 20 years, I worked in places that were never drawn on maps, on missions erased before they reached the evening news. Officially, I am retired, but men like me don't retire. We just vanish into silence until the silence breaks. The night it broke for me, I was alone. My porch light buzzed with that faint electric hum that always made me uneasy, like the world itself was holding its breath. And there, at the edge of the light, lay a small object. No note, no footprints in the dirt, just a burner phone. I picked it up, its weight familiar in my hand, like an old habit refusing to die. The screen flickered, and before I could press a single button, a calm, steady voice filled the air. "Kane, we need you. It's about the recruits." That was all. No names, no instructions, just a statement that felt less like an invitation and more like a sentence. 2 weeks later, I found myself in Colorado, standing before a set of rusted gates. To any passing driver, it looked like nothing, just the remains of an abandoned military site long forgotten by time. The sign was broken, the fences caved in, weeds choking the ground. But I knew better. I'd learned long ago that the deadliest secrets are always buried beneath the dust everyone ignores. 300 meters down, after 3 separate clearance checks and 2 biometric scans, the world changed. The air grew sterile, filtered to perfection. The walls turned to gleaming steel. Security cameras tracked every breath. Down there, silence wasn't absence, it was control. Through a wall of reinforced glass, I saw them, the recruits. They weren't soldiers, not in any way I recognized. They weren't cadets chasing medals or patriots waving flags. They were ordinary. A firefighter, a teacher, a programmer. People who should have been living quiet lives, now reduced to shadows of themselves. They ran obstacle courses until their lungs tore. They struck heavy bags until their hands bled. Their eyes were empty yet focused, like marionettes who had been taught to believe they chose their own strings. The man beside me, the so-called curator, spoke without looking at me. "These are the unmissables," he said flatly. I frowned. Unmissable? He nodded toward the glass. If they disappear, nobody asks questions. That was the moment they showed me the file. A thick folder, scarred from being handled so many times. Bold letters across the front, Project Black Moon. Inside were photographs, grainy, blurred, and yet impossible to misinterpret. They weren't shadows or tricks of light. They were structures. On the far side of the moon, where no one looks, where no broadcast satellite ever reaches, stood domes glowing faintly from within. Sharp angles, perfect symmetry, geometry that nature does not design. I had spent a lifetime among secrets, but for the first time in years, my hands trembled. The recruits weren't being prepared for any war on Earth. They were being reshaped for survival somewhere else, somewhere out there. Training ran 20 hours a day. Pressure chambers mimicking deep vacuum. Zero-gravity simulations that left them vomiting until their bodies adapted. Endless combat drills. And then the injections. They called them metabolic enhancers, but I knew that was a polite lie. I'd seen experimental medicine before, classified projects that blurred the line between soldier and subject, but this was something else. Their blood work didn't read human anymore. One man collapsed after running far beyond the limits of normal lungs. I saw him fall, body twitching, eyes rolling back. Yet minutes later he stood, pulse steady, breath calm, as if death itself had been outrun. Another woman floated in a sensory deprivation tag for 9.5 minutes without panic, staring into absolute black. When she emerged, her pupils were dilated, her skin pale, but she did not shake. She smiled. This wasn't training, it was reprogramming. And every day I asked myself, what exactly were they being prepared to meet? When I pressed for answers, I was told only what I had already begun to suspect. Funding didn't come from Washington. It came from elsewhere, from offshore accounts routed through a labyrinth of false foundations, from cartel networks laundering billions, from criminal empires buying science no government could admit existed. They weren't investing in exploration, they were buying survival. Weeks passed, and still I trained them. I told myself it was duty, that it was better they survived than not. But at night, when the corridors went quiet, I could hear the echoes of their screams, their ragged breaths, as the enhancements rewrote their bodies. Then one night, I found an envelope slipped beneath my door. No words, just a photograph. The lunar surface stretched pale and endless, but in the center was something that froze me to the bone. A footprint. Not ours, not human. The arch was too long, the depth too shallow. It looked as though gravity itself had obeyed whoever left it. And beside it, streaked across the dust, was a smear of metallic light. It glimmered like liquid, as if alive. The phone buzzed again, that same calm voice. Our people will land there within a year. You will prepare them. I had trained men for jungles where the air itself was poison, for deserts where the sun stripped skin from bone, for cities where shadows killed quicker than bullets, but never for this. Never for a battlefield on the far side of the moon. The launch came without ceremony. No cameras, no headlines. Just a shuttle with no flag, carrying recruits who no longer resembled the civilians they once were. Their names had been erased, their families never notified. In every sense but physical, they were already ghosts. 38 hours into lunar descent, we received their first transmission. The voices crackled through static, fractured but unmistakable. We've reached the dome. It's real. Another voice, tighter, urgent. Movement. Something's inside. Then came the scream, raw, human, terrified. For a full minute, silence stretched across the command room like a blade pressed against our throats. Then one last report came through, calm, steady, almost reverent. They knew we were coming. The feed collapsed. No further signals. The official record declared it a failed experimental test flight. Lost crew, classified debris, nothing to see. But I had seen, I had heard, and I will never unhear those last words. Now, years later, every night I ask myself the same question. What is worse, discovering we are not alone, or realizing they have been waiting for us all along? My name is Kevin Kane, and if this message survives, let it be known, the far side of the moon is not empty. And one day soon, you will learn why Project Black Moon exists. End of file.